and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. And I have to tell you, it's my favorite day of the week, my friends. Here's why. It's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. This is the day where we talk about, well, whatever you want to talk about. You see, normally during the week, you kind of have to be on the same page as me. And if you're not, well, I'm just probably not going to talk about it. But not today. Not today. On Fridays, we talk about whatever you want to talk about. And so the phone lines are open. If you want to be part of the show, and that phone number to get directly into the Cowboy State Politics Studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. That'll get you directly to me. And like I said, we'll keep it open all program long. And if there's something that's been gnawing at you, you just let me know. Give me a call, 307-374-8989. Well, this is the last program in the studio for the legislative session. We'll pick it up on Tuesday, but a couple of things are going to change. Of course, I'll be in the middle swamp, and the timing of the program, I have to move from a 2-hour show to a 1-hour show, and it'll still start at 8 a.m. The only difference is instead of going till 10, as we normally do, it'll be from 8 to 9. And the reason for that is the session always starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I don't want to miss it. And I don't want you to miss all of the shenanigans that happen during the session. And so for the next month, the month of February, it'll be from 8 to 9, Tuesday through Friday. Also, don't forget, and I haven't talked enough about this one, but during the session, the Open Range Record is going to have a nightly news broadcast. And I think we're going to start that at 7 p.m. every evening. And we'll just say for right now, we're going to do that. We'll do that Monday through Friday, or Tuesday through Friday. Let's do Tuesday through Friday. And that'll be the nightly news broadcast. It's called The Roundup. And you'll be able to watch it on the Open Range Record app and on the website and on YouTube and on Rumble and on Facebook and everywhere where we can broadcast that thing. We're going to. And the idea behind it is we're going to grab some legislators and just say, hey, come on, we're going to go do a news program. Let's talk about what happened during the day. And I'm going to make it my mission to get people from both sides on the program. And I, being the preeminent conservative that I am, even I get tired of the one-sidedness that we often see in politics. And as I have told you, the Open Range Record is about news. And I don't really care which side of the political aisle it comes from. It's about bringing you news. And so, and again, it shouldn't be a revolutionary concept, but the mainstream Wyoming press, they don't really do news anymore. It is opinion that is wrapped up to look like facts. And I'm gonna lead with a story this morning that's a perfect example of that. But we're not going to do that on the Open Range Record. We're going to have actual news stories, and there's a couple of them that are pretty good on there right now. That's the story that we're going to lead with. And then later on today, I've got another whopper of a story that we're going to drop. And it is, let's just say that some people in politics are sheep and other people are not. And other people, like, they play with sheep. Okay, so that was terrible. I shouldn't have gone there. But it's kind of true. Yeah, don't read too much into that. But anyway, we have a story about a nonprofit that it has some familiar participants in it. We'll just say that. So that is going to be dropping. Well, I hope to have it on the website by 10, or it will be 10 because we'll still be doing the program by 11. Anyway, it's a big story, and there's going to be a lot of those on the Open Range Record. And like I said, the main point is that it is just news, and we're going to make it our mission to give you both sides of it, whether you like it or not. I halfway joke that, with our team, that if somebody can write incomplete sentences and carry on a coherent thought, I'll publish their op-ed or their piece. And like I said, I'm only half joking because it's I'm actually being sort of serious. And to that point, I sent out a personal invitation to all the Democrats in the legislature last night saying, hey, if you haven't looked at the Open Range Record, please do. Would be happy to publish your op-eds. And so that's our mission. And the nightly news broadcast, the Roundup, 7 p.m. Tuesday through Friday on the Open Range Record apps, the Android, the iOS app, and on the website. Oh yeah, by the way, if you didn't see the news piece on the Open Range Record yesterday, the iOS app is up and ready and available. You can download it. It's super cool. Well, it's all cool. Of course it is. I made it. But anyway, my friends, that's all available. Let's hear on today's program. Just going to be kind of a normal day. Hopefully we get some calls. But the story that we're going to lead with this morning has been one that we've been covering for, well, quite some time. And it involves Senator Ed Cooper saying that the members of the Freedom Caucus are paid $30,000 if they vote correctly. Well, that's not true. And I had Andy Roth on the program day before yesterday. I mean, he's the only one that can, say if that thing is true or not. And he said it is absolutely not true. Also, I asked him if he is indeed the DC overlord that all of the redcoats accused the Freedom Caucus of voting in line with. And he said no to that one too. No, there is no DC overlord with the Freedom Caucus. And no, they don't pay $30,000 if you vote correctly. So let's go to the cow pie. In an article entitled "State Senator Retracts Statement Accusing the Freedom Caucus of Rewarding Votes." And that was the big lie that was later picked up by Tom Lubnow in an opinion piece that was published by the cow pie. It's still on there. I did look early this morning to see if there was a retraction, another so-called retraction from the cow pie, but there wasn't. So here's what Claire McFarland, and I've got another bone to pick with her. I'll get to that later. But anyway, State Senator Ed Cooper is retracting a statement that he made last week accusing the National Freedom Caucus network of hinging campaign donations to its local members on their voting records. I quote, "I spoke incorrectly on that because I can't substantiate it," he said. A Wyoming State Senator, let's see here, Ed Cooper of 10 Sleep told the Cowboy State Daily on Thursday that he has retracted the statement. He didn't really retract it. And if you give me just a moment, I'll prove it to you. It'll be just a second here. I should have done this before the broadcast, but, you can't think of everything. This one probably should have let's see here, Google Drive. Here we go. Sign in. But anyway, so the Open Range Record reached out to Senator Cooper, And it was just to, and the way that, we thought about it is, hey, if what Senator Cooper is saying is true, then this is a giant story. That if indeed the Freedom Caucus members are getting paid $30,000 if they vote correctly, well, then that's a gigantic story, and it's one that we should cover. Well, it turns out that it's not true, as I told you, and so we had a journalist reach out to Senator Cooper and talk to him about it. And here, if you just give me just a second, paste, there we go. All right, so the way I'm going to have to do this is the only thing you're going to see on the screen is the little bar that it's playing, I think. But here we go. Let's see here. I think I can do this. We're just going to try it. Here we go. All right. Nope, that's not going to work. So tell you what, during the break, we'll take a quick break at 8:30, and I'll come back, and I'm going to play you the audio from that phone call. And it's pretty amazing because in there he says, well, it just doesn't mean it's not true. It just means that I can't substantiate it. So essentially, he listened to hearsay, and he just took it as gospel fact because all of the redcoats are screaming about it. The cow pie goes on. Cooper's original statement was, quote, the state's Freedom Caucus in D.C. has pledged $30,000 to each House race. You know what? Not even going to read it. I read it to you yesterday and the day before. But he says to the cow pie, I sent a letter to the editor of the Basin paper over the weekend stating that I spoke incorrectly on that because I couldn't substantiate it. Not that he didn't have any idea that he was what he was talking about. Not that he was just listening to gossip. No. I just can't substantiate it. And he even said in the letter, when I can, I'll reissue the statement. Of course he would, because Ed Cooper is a rabid redcoat. And anything he can do to damage the Freedom Caucus, he's going to try to do that. The cow pie says the Wyoming Freedom Caucus, which is a chapter of the National State Freedom Caucus, has around 25 confirmed members. Proponents of the Republican membership coalition say it's a voice for true political right in Wyoming. Well, it is. Now, the cow pie interviewed Mr. Andy Roth. By the way, hey, cow pie, how did you hear about Andy Roth? Did you do some research, or did you have a source that tipped you off again, or did you listen to this program? My guess is you listen to this show. You may as well just admit it. Let's see here. But anyway, so the cow pie talks about Ed Cooper's retraction, but they don't say a darn thing about what Tom Lubnow said in his op-ed. Not one thing. They didn't even go back. And by the way, here, I'll read you what Lubnow had to say about that. Let's see here. Where is it? Here we go. Quote, as Senator Ed Cooper noted, Freedom Caucus operatives openly tie campaign money to obedience. So he's not just quoting Ed Cooper. He's stating it as a fact. And by the way, this is considered libel. This isn't opinion anymore. When you state something as a fact in your writing, it is called libel. Let me read it to you again. As Senator Ed Cooper noted, Freedom Caucus operatives openly tie campaign money to obedience. That's Tom Lubnow saying it. That's not Ed Cooper. That's not the cow pie. That's Tom Lubnow. And as a lawyer, he should know exactly what that is. But the cow pie, they didn't mention that in their retraction article from Ed Cooper. No. See, that would be too much for them. And the reason why they didn't mention Tom Lubnow is the cow pie is totally in line with it. Anything that they can do to bash the Freedom Caucus, that's what they do. And that's why Claire McFarland didn't even point out that, hey, Tom Lubnow said the same thing. You see, this is what I'm talking about with the news media in Wyoming. Claire McFarland knew darn good and well that Tom Lubnow had said exactly the same thing in his op-ed, but she didn't mention it. You see, this is the complete dishonesty of the Wyoming media, and it's one of the big reasons why we started the Open Range Record. By the way, and that we can deliver the news better than anybody else can, and that we're already proving that. The mobile apps, the Android app, the iOS app, the website, all of it in a seamless experience. That's why we did it, is because we are sick to death of the fabricating, lying. Well, I shouldn't even use those terms, because most of what they do is they just twist the truth. And so, whatever reporting they do, it does have a kernel of truth in it, but it's just not the whole truth. And, it's basically a lie of omission. A lie of omission is still a lie. When you don't tell the whole truth, well, I just told you this little part, and you leave out the rest of it, that's called a lie of omission, and it's still a lie. And, the cow pie, I really wish that they would shape up and actually report the news. But, you and me know they're probably not going to do that. So anyway, at the bottom of the hour, I'll get that soundbite queued up, and we'll return to this topic. And I'm going to play you that phone call. It is absolutely incredible. Make sure you stay tuned. Oh, and one other thing that Ed Cooper does is he tries to make himself the hero out of it. At the end of the phone call, he says, I've owned this. I made a mistake, and I owned it. And we need more of that in politics. And that's what I did. So you lie about somebody, and then you try to twist it into you being the hero. It's just absolutely incredible. He deserves, the cow pie and Ed Cooper deserve each other. All right, so let's move on. One of the big topics during the legislative session will be recalibration, and it has been for quite some time. The recalibration committee has been holding meetings for, weeks, I guess. No, it has been weeks. Well, district-level mouthpieces have started to weigh in on this, and one of them is the school superintendent of Sheridan School District number 1, and his name is Jeff Jones. Excuse me, Dr. Jeff Jones. Here's what he says, and I quote, "As the Wyoming legislative budget session begins on Monday, the recalibration bill advancing from the recalibration committee deserves close attention from communities across the state. In my opinion, this version of the bill misses the mark in 3 fundamental ways. It seriously undervalues funding for teacher salaries." Oh, wait, it's coming. Significantly reduces local control and regrettably increases class sizes in our schools. Let's take the first one, Jeff, boy. Oh, and by the way, Jeff, if you'd like to come on this program, I will give you an hour, and we will sit down and we'll talk about recalibration. We'll talk about school funding. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. But you're not right on this. Let me just give you a for instance. Let's say, and we'll just use round numbers because it's easier. Let's say that you have a class of 20 students. Okay, you probably don't. It's probably more closer to 16, but let's just say you have 20 students. And let's also assume that you pay the teacher $100,000 a year. You don't. It's probably closer to 70 if you include benefits and everything into it. But let's just say it's 100,000. Well, if out of your 20 students at a rate of $21,700 per student every year, that means it takes a little under 5 of those students to cover the salary of the teacher. Where is the money from the other 15, Jeff? Where is that money going? Because you do the math and it doesn't exactly add up, because you don't pay for buildings. You don't pay for transportation. Both of them are reimbursed to you from the state. Now, you might make the argument, well, it's not reimbursed immediately. Yeah, that's why we get to spend all. That's bullcrap, because in the end, you get reimbursed anyway. And I assume you have people that are educated in mathematics working for the school district, and so you ought to be able to budget for that time in between where you spent the transportation money and when you get reimbursed for it. It's called budgeting. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe you don't teach arithmetic in school anymore, but I'm pretty sure that you could figure this out. Yeah. Now, Wyoming spends almost more money than almost every other state on education per student, almost more than any other state. And the best comparison is to South Dakota. South Dakota spends about half of what Wyoming does per student, and their test scores are higher. So, Jeff, how is it that spending more money on education doesn't equal higher scores? Well, it could be that the two aren't tied together, maybe. Oh, and what about last legislative session when a raise was passed of 8.5% for every school employee in the entire state of Wyoming, and there was only one school district that actually gave that 8.5% raise, and it wasn't yours, Jeff. No, it wasn't. Now I will admit, and I don't remember which one it was. There was a Sheridan school district that did give a 6.5% raise, but again, I'm assuming you're in the school district, so you understand mathematics. 8.5 does not equal 6.5. Those two are not the same number. They're not the same thing. Well, you didn't give the money to the teachers that you claimed that is needed. And if it is indeed needed, why didn't you give the raise that was appropriated by the legislature for raises of all school employees? Why didn't you do that, Jeff? Well, it's because Jeff and people like him wanted to spend that money on other things. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the Sheridan School District number 1 spent all that money on, but it evidently wasn't on teachers, and I can prove it. And so, Jeff, when and if you do come on this program, we're going to talk about that. Because if teacher salaries are on the top of your list, why didn't you increase them when you had the money to do so? I'll tell you why. Because the legislature can't dictate to school districts how they spend their money. It comes in the form of a block grant. This is what we're talking about with local control. That school districts get to divvy up that money however they see fit. And the only thing the legislature can do is offer a recommendation. That's what the recalibration thing is all about. A recommendation as to how you should spend your money. But most school districts don't do that. So the model might say that you need, and again, I'm just using round numbers here. So don't read into the numbers. It's just easier if you use round numbers. So let's say the model says you should hire 50 teachers. Most school districts in the state do not follow that. Instead, what they do is they hire 40 teachers, and then they take the money from the other 10 teachers, and they disperse it throughout the district. And so at one point, a couple of years ago, there were 800 positions that we were paying for, you and me, for teachers the teachers do not exist. That we are paying for teachers that are not there. And still, the school districts claim that they don't have enough money. And I love this statistic. Also, I'll refresh this one for you when I'm down in Cheyenne. But a couple of years ago, there was a news report out that said that enrollment in Wyoming schools had actually gone down about 1,900 students, give or take. And during the same time period, school districts and staff, statewide now, not talking about any particular school district, but statewide, school districts increased administration and staff about 3,600 positions. So not only did you have fewer kids going through your school, you more than doubled that amount in administration costs. And so go back to my original question. Where is all the money going from those 15 other kids? It's probably going to administration. And let me show you another one here. Let's see if I can make this happen. I pulled up the crew report. Yeah, I think I could do this. Hold on just a second, and I will share the screen. So anyway, the crew report is everything you want to know about, here we go. Everything you want to know about school spending in the entire state of Wyoming. If you spend enough time looking at it, you can find out anything you want to know. So here is what it says about the administration in Sheridan County. And you can see it says over on the right-hand side, it says male FTE. FTE stands for full-time employee. And you'll notice the number 3 there. And then it says female FTE 1. So they have 3 guys, 1 gal, and for a total of 4. And the average base salary of all of them, so that's all of them added together, is over $100,000 per year. Now, while in my quick perusal of the crew report, I did not locate the school superintendent salary, but I guarantee you that the 3 employees do not equal the 1 superintendent. And so if the average is $107,580 per year for the average for the 4 of them, you can bet that the total amount being paid to Jeff Jones is a significantly higher number. And so when we're talking about school funding, Jeffy boy, explain to me how $21,700 per student, more than almost every other state is not enough money. How can you possibly claim that your schools are not being funded adequately? I mean, and this is the bizarre claim of that lawsuit by the Wyoming Education Association, that somehow the way they figure it, they're not getting enough money at $21,700 per student. There's another piece that you should go check out. It's Doug Gerard has written another one. It's been a while since he's published anything, but it's on his website, the Evidence-Based Wyoming. And if you pull up the website, you'll see the article front and center. But this is exactly what he's talking about. The school districts literally waste money, and most of it does not go to your kids. All right, so moving on with what Jeff Jones says. And I quote, "First, it's worth acknowledging that our legislators have a tough job. They're in the arena that most people would avoid like the plague." I would agree with that. I would not want Agent 29's job at all. I mean, I am doing what I was born to do behind this microphone, and I am not born to be a legislator. Though, and I'd probably get thrown out in the first 10 minutes, but I have to tell you, my friends, it would be a glorious 10 minutes on the floor. Anyway, back to Jeff Jones. So, for instance, one of our constituents hired by the state stated the following in her report from September 2024. In Wyoming, the average teaching wage only grew from $60,000 to $62,000 from May of 2012 to May of 2022. The consultant added that in 2012, for average teacher salaries, the state funding model was 7% lower than what districts were actually paying teachers as an average salary. There's a couple problems with this argument, Jeff. First, you are in complete control of what you pay teachers. The state cannot tell you how much you can pay teachers. And so if teachers are underpaid in your district, it is your fault. It is not the fault of the legislature. Secondarily, and I mentioned this before, the legislature approved an 8.5% raise and gave you the money for it to increase all of those teachers' salaries, and you didn't do it. You didn't give them a salary increase of 8.5%. Why not? You said that teacher salaries are too low, but you didn't give them a raise. Why is that, Jeff? Well, hold on. Looky there. It's the studio dog. And she doesn't want to go out. She just wanted to be on camera. All right. Anyway, so you get the point with this ridiculous op-ed that he's using. I mean, and his arguments might be true from a certain point of view. Like what he said in that last part, that the teacher salaries hadn't increased from May of 2012 to May of 2022. I'm sure that that's correct. But the question is why? It's not the fault of the legislature. It's the fault of school districts. And if you didn't have so much money being spent on administration, my guess is you probably have more money to spend on teacher salaries, which you claim is the most important thing. But he continues, by 2022, that percentage had more than doubled, with districts paying 16% more than average teacher salaries compared to the funding model. Again, with the funding model. All right, so the recalibration resets the funding model. But again, school districts don't have to follow it. And my guess, and I thought that school districts were in the business of education, and if they are, then they would already know that they have to pay their teachers more, which, by the way, they're getting plenty of money to do. Again, Jeff, where's the money from the 15 other students going? He continues, meanwhile, the same consultant told state legislators that during that same time period, there was a rapid growth in comparable health and business occupations as a result of sharp rises in wages. This is not an issue we need to study longer. Our young people are doing the math and choosing not to enter a field that doesn't offer a competitive wage. Again, Jeff, who is it that is in charge of teacher salaries? Is it the state or is it the local school district? It's the latter, my friend. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to play you that phone call from Senator Ed Cooper. And I mean, don't miss this, my friends. It is absolutely amazing. So we'll do that when we come back. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. Back in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Friday. It's Open Line Friday on the program. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. That's the phone number that will get you directly to yours truly. And we can, talk about whatever's on your mind. 307-374-8989. Now, back to Ed Cooper. I told you that when we saw what he said in the Grable Standard, we at the Open Range Record were very intrigued about it. In fact, we hadn't heard that before. It was a revelation, really. And we thought, wow, have we been so blind to miss that indeed Freedom Caucus members are making 30 grand. No, we weren't blind. We knew exactly what was going on, that wasn't a thing, and that didn't happen. And it was another bullcrap lie made up by the Redcoats. And so we reached out to Senator Ed Cooper, and here is what the wayward senator had to say. You're going to love this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Sarah. So that information has been out there for quite a while. I couldn't tell you exactly where I got it. There's several people that have told me that over the past 6-8 months. I'm afraid I can't substantiate it in writing, and as such, when that came out over last week, that story, I put a letter to the editor into the Grable paper, Grable and Basin papers, stating that I haven't been able to substantiate that in writing, and that I apologize to their readers. When I do get substantiation of it, I'll put that information out there.
Okay.
But in the short term, in the interest of transparency, I can't substantiate it in writing. So unfortunately, that's hearsay, but the people that deal in these things every day tell me it's absolutely true.
Oh, yeah.
So that's all I've got is what some of those folks have told me. So that's my bad. I made a mistake with that, and as such, I guess I stand by the statement. I think it's probably true, but unfortunately, I can't substantiate it in writing, so I have to report it as hearsay. And so that's what I've done with my letter to the editor that I put in over the weekend here. So,
okay. Would you be willing to share who gave you the information?
Oh, ma'am, it's all over out there.
Oh, it's everybody.
No, it's I've called a couple of people last week, and that I talked to about it over the past 2 months, and And they all stand by their thoughts on it, but they haven't been looking back to me with written substantiation. So I'm not going to put them on the spot.
No. I can't.
I
don't want to out my source. I'm not going to put them on the spot. But it's all over out there. It's all over. Everybody knows it's true. Yeah.
the statement. I'll own it as my own mistake and go from there.
Listen to this last part.
We need a little bit more of that, where people will stand up and say, I made a mistake. I did. I didn't substantiate it before I said it. So.
Okay. Well, that
doesn't mean it's not true. It means I just simply didn't substantiate it. So.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
So he's the hero. We need a little bit more of that, and that's what I've done. I admitted my mistake, but that doesn't mean it's not true. Oh my God. Now, if I were to say something as outrageous as members of the Wyoming caucus were receiving, daily stipends from B. Wayne Hughes, which they're not, I would never say that because I don't think that it's not true. I don't think it's true at all. And the left, the cow pie, everybody would be on my case nonstop, telling everybody how I made crap up. But, we don't do that on Cowboy State Politics because we're documented to be mostly right, 99%. Unlike Ed Cooper, who has no idea what he's talking about. And I think that maybe he dreamt this up in one of the times that he was sleeping through a committee meeting or, on the floor. He does have the name Sleepy Ed, but absolutely outrageous, my friends. There is no documentation whatsoever. And here's the thing about it. If you want to know how much money is being given to candidates, all you have to do is go on YCFIS, the Wyoming Campaign Finance Information System, and you can find out how much money people are getting. Because, as Ed Cooper knows, you have to report those campaign donations. And Ed Cooper also knows that it is publicly available. And so, if indeed this was true, Ed Cooper knows exactly where to go to substantiate this. And the reason why Ed Cooper has not done that is because it does not exist. I'm not saying that Ed Cooper didn't go to YCFIS and look for himself. He probably didn't because, he's in the business of accepting hearsay. But he knows darn good and well that you can verify this or not. Also, we talked to Andy Roth, the president of the State Freedom Caucus Network, day before yesterday, and he said unequivocally that this is not true. And he also put out a post on X saying that, hey, Ed Cooper, this isn't true. Oh, and by the way, this brings me to the piece on the Open Range Record. It's the main story right on the front page. Go check it out. We went into it, quite a bit deeper than the Cow Pie did. No surprise there. But go check it out. I mean, it's a good piece by our journalist, Sarah Hendrick. She does a great job for us. And actually, all the journalists at the Open Range Record are doing a good job. And like I told you, after the program's concluded today, I'm going to drop another story by another journalist. And this one, all I can say right now is Baba Black Sheep. I'm just putting that out there. It's kind of mind blowing. All right, my friends. Well, that's enough of Ed Cooper. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. Going down to Cheyenne, one of the things, well, I miss the lovely Christine, of course, but, she has the ability to come down and visit me, which she does often. And man, when you're in the swamp, there is nothing better than having your wife show up to hang out with you. But I also miss my puppies. You saw Maisie here a little bit ago, but Maisie and Hope miss them too. Now, that prompted me to look up, some stuff about other famous dogs. And this one, I didn't know this before I found this morning, but this is from historyfacts.com. The title of the article is, one of the first White House pets was John Adams' dog named Satan. Not kidding. Here we go. And I quote, although he was the second president of the United States, John Adams was the first to briefly live in the presidential residence, now known as the White House. That means he and his wife, Abigail, inaugurated such White House traditions as the selection of furnishings, the hosting of official gatherings, and the introduction of presidential pets, one of whom answered to the moniker of Satan. Despite the copious surviving correspondence between John and Abigail Adams, there exist few juicy details about this devilishly named dog for historians to sink their canines into. We do know that the pup shared the White House grounds with another mixed breed named Juno, and possibly a third dog named Mark, but again, there's few details. We can also deduce that Satan had to compete for divided attention of the horse-loving president who built the White House stables to house his carriage horses, Cleopatra and Caesar. Though they were first to bring animal residents into the White House, the Adamses were not the last. In fact, all presidents have some sort of pet in the White House. We all know about Joe Biden's dog that bit everybody. Let's see here. Later non-human occupants of Pennsylvania Avenue include Benjamin Harrison's possums, Mr. Reciprocity and Mr. Protection, Rutherford B. Hayes's cats, Siam and Miss Pussy, and Piccololimi, and Theodore Roosevelt's guinea pigs, Admiral Dewey, Dr. Johnson, Bishop Duane, Fighting Bob Evans, and Father O'Grady. But as with other matters of American presidential history, it's hard to top the standard set by George Washington. It's really hard to top George Washington in anything, who blessed his dogs with such memorable names as the Drunkard, Madam Moose, and Sweet Lips. So a little bit of dog history in the presidential mansion for you. I really am. I really do miss my puppies when I'm out of town. And, it's I try during the session to come back to reality, at least every other weekend, or if I can pull it off, every weekend, to go to church, see the lovely Christine and hang out for a little bit. So I do get to see him once a week, but man, dealing with politicians all week long, it would be nice to come home to Maisie, the Amazing Maze, and Hoppity Hope. I know. Hey, I sound all tough and stuff on the program, but we do have cute names for the dogs. From USA Today, Americans want voter integrity. Why don't Democrats? Well, because Democrats don't care about the integrity of the election. The only thing they care about is winning the election. But this is a piece from USA Today, and I quote, "I am loath to give credits to my friends in the Democrat Party for much, but I will say this about them. They know how and when to circle the wagons to get things done in Congress. I hate this when it's done in practice, like when Senate Democrats passed the Affordable Care Act in 2009 with just 60 votes and no Republican support. Senate Republicans were able to narrowly pass the One Big Beautiful Act in 2025 with J.D. Vance casting the tie-breaking vote. Republicans in Congress must learn from that success and also rip a page from the Democratic playbook and forge ahead with the chutzpah to get one more bill passed. The Safeguard American Voter Eligibility, or the SAVE Act, which would require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote in federal elections, passed the U.S. House with some bipartisan support and should be brought to the Senate floor. Senate Majority Leader John Thune of South Dakota said February 3rd that he was open to pushing Democrats who oppose the bill towards the standing filibuster, a seldom used interpretation of the rules, to require that senators actively hold the floor with continuous debate to delay or block a vote. As to this writing, Thune hasn't decided yet if he will do that. Republicans need 60 votes, which they may not have, to invoke cloture and end debate. Republicans should allow Democrats to exhaust themselves with the filibuster, and when it ends, whip up enough votes to pass the SAVE Act, or to end the misery that would be a Senate filibuster. And so a good example of what they're talking about in this op-ed is the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. He stands up and gives that really long speech. And, he almost collapses, and at the end of the movie, they're hauling him out. Okay, that's not exactly how they do it. It's not one person having to hold the floor. But what they have to do is continue passing it off. And it has to be one continuous speech. It's misery. And this is where you get the whole, everybody remembers the, reading of the phone book on the floor of the Senate and, reading poems or stories or whatever. That's actually happened. But what John Thune should do is force the Democrats to do that. And then pretty soon, after a day or so, even some of the Democrats will be screaming to end the misery of the filibuster. But the reason why the Democrats don't really care about the SAVE Act, well, they do care about it. They care about it not passing, is it has long been a mission of the Democrat Party to create a permanent majority in the United States. That's what all this illegal immigration is about, and all of their opposition to anything that would shore up not Wyoming's. Well, it kind of happens here too. Shore up America's elections. Now, we don't see this a lot in Wyoming, except, of course, opposition to anything that comes out of Chuck Gray's mouth, because, he's been trying really hard to shore up Wyoming's elections. And, the Redcoats in Wyoming, they have a very similar goal in mind. They do want a permanent majority in the Wyoming legislature. It's just they don't have the ability to pull it off like the Democrats in Congress do. That's what all this opposition to the Freedom Caucus is about. That they definitely don't want more conservatives to get elected to the House of Representatives. Or the Senate, for that matter. It's what the deal between Bo Beitman and Dennis Beitman and Tara Nethercott and the rest of the Redcoats was about, creating that permanent majority. Though I don't think they'll be able to hold it. There's too many seats that are up for grabs in the Wyoming Senate this year. People not returning, open seats. And so my guess would be as conservatives, they're going to snag a few of those. But don't ever forget that the Democrats always have a long game, and it is always power. It doesn't really matter what the bill is. The end goal for the Democrats is to maintain their own power in that particular chamber. Well, if you didn't notice, and maybe you did, there's a piece on the Cowboy about this, but the State Lands and Investment Board kind of reversed course on all the way. No, it wasn't Governor Gordon. And no, it wasn't Treasurer Kurt Meyer that reduced course. It was the other three of them, Chuck Gray, Megan Degenfelder, and Christy Racinas, who decided to vote in opposition to all of these wind projects. In the Cowboy, an article entitled, "By a 3-2 margin, Wyoming top officials vote for process to halt wind leases." Written by the aforementioned Claire McFarland. Blech. And I quote, 3 of Wyoming's 5 statewide elected officials voted Thursday to start a process that could halt 2 controversial wind leases of state lands in Converse and Niobrara counties, and to direct the state attorney general to withdraw an appeal seeking to defend one of those leases. Secretary of State Chuck Gray brought 2 of the motions at Thursday's State Board of Land Commissioners meeting in Cheyenne. One, to start a process that could ultimately kill the Pronghorn H2 project in Converse County. Gray emphasized a district court judge's December ruling saying the board broke its own rules to approve the lease. Gray's other motion was for the board to direct Attorney General Keith Couts, who is also a former Wyoming Supreme Court justice and former district court judge, to withdraw the appeal he's preparing in defense of the lease. So essentially, the SLIB board, or the State Lands and Investment Board, it's redundant to say the SLIB board. Anyway, they approved the Pronghorn project with the assistance, and let's not forget this, of Megan Degenfelder and Christy Racinas, though they've reversed course now. I just want to chart for you the history of how this thing went down. And then a district judge ruled that the board broke its own rules to approve this lease. And so he put the axe to the wind lease. Now, Attorney General Keith Couts then took it upon himself to say that he's going to file an appeal. And this was a big blow up between Secretary Chuck Gray and Governor Gordon about Keith Couts just unilaterally saying that he was going to appeal the decision without the approval of the board. That's part of the reason that Chuck Gray and Mark Gordon got into it, and Gordon challenged him to step outside. That would, if I could have a camera there to watch that, that would be funny. But anyway, let's see here. The Cowboy continues. All 3 motions passed 3-2, with Superintendent of Public Instruction Megan Degenfelder voting alongside Gray and Racinas, and Governor Gordon and Treasurer Kurt Meyer both voting no. The about-face follows 10 months of controversy and passionate public debate over the 2 projects, which are slated to cover several thousand acres of state and federal lands. Those unfolded after what some members of the public cast as a threat of litigation, and the Pronghorn Counsel himself, Jeff Pope, called a simple reality. And I quote, Pronghorn's position is that a vote to rescind the leases would be unlawful, he said. Should the board vote today, we'll be filing a lawsuit today, also seeking temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction. Based on my prior experience, we're bullish on the chances of success here. Now, Pope emphasized that though Converse County District Judge Scott Peasley struck down the Converse County lease as contrary to the board's rules, no court has struck down the company's counterpart, the Sidewinder project. Now, that's where the motion also came, I believe, from Auditor Racinas to do away with that one as well. Essentially, these leases are the same, Racinas said. If lease A is in violation of the law, I'm saying then that lease B, that is the Sidewinder project, is in violation of the law. Pope had noted a legal dynamic that appeals courts review events of past controversies, and agencies can't go back and tweak their decisions to sway the appeals process. Members of the public later accused the Pronghorn developers of trying to change its own legal footing, however. Listen to this part. Quote, so all of a sudden, the project is changing. It's just going to be wind now, said Bob G.S. of Lusk, speaking in opposition to the Converse County-based lease. Pronghorn H2 Clean Energy Project leaders announced in recent days that they're removing the hydrogen generation component of the project. This was the one that Secretary Gray, called the, I can't remember the title he put on, but basically they were going to harvest hydrogen and create synthetic jet fuel. And it was, the ridiculous boondoggle, as he described it. But anyway, so they've reversed course, and as they should. It is, and you'll hear a lot of people say that, well, it is the duty of the SLIB board, or see, I did it again, the State Lands and Investment Board, to generate revenue on state lands. Okay, yeah, that's true, but there's nothing in there that says they have to approve every project. If a project doesn't make sense, maybe they shouldn't approve it. And the windmills, they present a big environmental question mark. We're all told that this green energy stuff is, it's better for the environment and, renewable energy and all that stuff. Well, the truth is, you should go visit one of those windmills and go walk around the base of it. What you'll find is an area of ground that looks like somebody changed their oil about 27 times there, because you have to lubricate those engines. And it's not just, and to do that, you have to use oil. And then talking about the environmental impact of the windmill itself. You know how big one of those concrete platforms is to support that windmill that's, I don't know how tall they are, but they're way in the air. And here's the other part of this too. And this one really gets me, that windmills are not profitable. They're the only way that they are profitable with our current technology is with government subsidies. And if you don't have the government subsidies, well, then you're not going to make any money of them. Years ago, I was at a bid meeting. It was after the 2008 crash. I was working for a construction company, and we were trying to find anything that we could make money on. And so we thought, well, maybe we could build the site for one of these windmills. And they're going through their presentation. I'm doing the numbers on my computer, and all of a sudden, and all I kept seeing was red. In all of our estimations, just red. And I raised my hand, and I'm like, now, wait a minute. The numbers I'm running here shows that this thing can't make any money. And the guy actually said, well, yeah, because you have to have the government subsidies. And this is very, very similar to all of these affordable housing projects we're seeing popping up around the state, that they have huge tax benefits, and it ends up being the developers that make all the money. And there again is another story that we've been covering on the Open Range Record that nobody else is, because all the liberal papers, specifically the Wyoming Tribune Eagle, they're all in favor of all this so-called affordable housing. And usually what happens is the developers, they get paid to come up with the project, they get paid to build the project, and then they release it to the municipality after a certain amount of years. And what they've done is they've built the project. Everything that is built has an engineered lifespan in it. And you do that in business so that consumers have to replace your product. You ever notice that stoves and appliances that were built in the 1970s, man, you can't kill those things. They continue to work. And I know that you all know what I'm talking about. The apartment I used to live in, the stove was it was the green color from the 1970s, But that thing, I mean, I didn't even have to put a thermometer in the oven to bake bread or anything, man. You could just set it and it was right on the nose. But the reason why appliances aren't built like that anymore is there's an engineered lifespan in there. So, after 10 years or 15 years or whatever, the appliance, probably a lot shorter than that, the appliance fails and you have to make another one. And one of the ways that you do this is some of the products you use to build whatever it is that you're building are substandard. They're not the highest quality. And so they are going to fail at some point. And so at the point at which these big, gigantic firms like Boston Financial, they've built a project with kind of inferior products. And so at 15 years, you're going to have a complete remodel. Well, it's at that point that they turn the building back to the municipality. And so you're left with this building that's in disrepair and in need of remodeling. And taxpayers get stuck with it all. And here's the irony behind this whole thing. Most of them don't have to pay property taxes. Because they figure out a way to where the public owns 0.0001 of the whole total of that project, or 0.01%. And we learned in math, not that school district number 1 in Sheridan could figure this out because they can't figure out school funding. But when you have a percentage and you want to find out what the real number is, you move it to the left 2 places. And that tells you how much of that project they actually build. And so while taxpayers are on the hook to build it, the company doesn't pay any property taxes. And in the end, we end up having to pay for it. And all of these government boondoggles are very, very, very similar. With the wind, you're using our property, state land, and business should make a profit. But when you inject government subsidies into it, and taxpayers are on the hook for a large percentage of it, or your project doesn't make sense, or it harms the environment, or it's a big giant problem for property owners around it, then we need to take a second look at it. And I'm glad that the State Lands and Investment Board is doing that, rightfully so. All right, so we're going to take another quick break, and when we continue, we're going to go on to some more national news, some stories that you may have missed. So we'll do that right after the break. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Friday, Open Line Friday. Welcome to the program, the last show we're doing here in the studio before I make my way down to the middle swamp. And make no mistake, my friends, while the swamp in Cheyenne may not be as wide as the one in Washington, D.C., it is most certainly as deep. So welcome back to the program. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. And I have on the phone my favorite state auditor, Auditor Racinas. Welcome to the program.
Hi, David. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Where are you traveling to? I hear that you're in the car.
Yes, and if you...
Uh-oh. Think I may have lost you.
Okay.
Oh, there you are.
How's now?
I kind of heard you. So what are you up to? Okay. Well, Auditor Racinas, if you can get to a spot where you've got a little bit better signal, try to call us back and we'll get you back on the program. Yeah. It's, in Wyoming, it's there's just some spots where you don't have service. I kind of like it. My phone doesn't ring, and you can just travel down the road. And then it's, at the most inopportune times, your phone rings. But you learn to, if you do a lot of traveling, you figure out where all of the dead spots are. So, Auditor Racinas, if you're still listening, go ahead and try to give me a call back, and we'll get you on the program. There's a lot of questions I've got to ask you about this pronghorn project. All right, so until our state auditor calls back, let's see here. What do we got? This one's great. Oh, man. Maxine Waters. Do they get much better than her? Do they get dumber than Maxine Waters? Now, this is a piece from The Blaze, and it's entitled, White House Slams Rude and Low IQ Maxine Waters After Scott Bessent Criticizes Her During a Congressional Hearing. Okay, so hold on. Hold that thought on Maxine Waters, and we'll see if we can get Auditor Racinas. All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. How are you this morning, Auditor Racinas?
Good. I am pulled over in the lovely hamlet of Glendo.
Glendo.
And I am, yes. And, oops, let me turn off my navigation. Anyway, I am headed to Gillette for a track meet today.
Oh.
And I am very happy about that.
Awesome. So getting out of the swamp.
Day, there's no blizzard. Yes, there you go. Yeah.
All right. Well, before you called, I was just talking about the vote on the State Lands and Investment Board on the pronghorn and the Sidewinder project. And by the way, good job voting the way that you did. Very, very proud of you. I think that was a good vote. But can you take a few minutes and just walk us through what happened there?
Sure. And what I really need is about 3 hours to talk about everything that's happened with these and my feelings, which I know you want to hear about.
I do. Yes.
What happened yesterday is, we approved these leases back in April. And yesterday, what happened after that is there was a lawsuit on one of them, and that lease was struck down by a judge, Judge Peasley, over in Converse County, and that was based on a portion of our rules that the lease didn't align with. So he declared that the lease was in violation of our rules. Now, and I'm not an attorney, none of us on SLIB are, but we all know enough to be dangerous. But essentially, rules have the force and effect of law. So if it's against our rules, it's not a legal lease. And so we voted to rescind that lease, and it's I'll call it its sister lease in Niobrara County. Different project, different set of land, but I mean, the leases are identical. The projects were very similar. It's the same company. Like there's some distinctions, but not really when it comes to the reasons that the judge overturned the Pronghorn lease.
Fair enough. Well, I know you and I have talked quite a bit about the several of the votes on the State Lands and Investment Board as it pertains to wind. And, you know, I mean, I've told you that I'm not in favor of any of those. So why is it, I mean, I guess you mentioned that there were some problems with the projects that violated the rules. Can you explain maybe give us the 2 minutes as to what that problem was?
Sure. And again, not a lawyer, but the opinion.
We play one on the radio.
Yes, absolutely. So our rules say, and again, I'm paraphrasing, our rules say, define wind energy leasing as, wind energy leasing is a project, blah, blah, wind turbines, including connecting to the grid.
Okay.
And that what became an issue and what the judge overturned it on was that word including. And so he interpreted that to mean any wind leasing project on state land has to connect to the grid.
Okay. Makes sense.
So these two projects, there was no plan. There wasn't necessarily a plan not to do that, but it wasn't required. It was like a maybe, but probably not sort of thing. So that's the very short legal version as to why those leases just the one lease was vacated before that judge.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean, do you expect them to rework their project and apply again?
And that did come up yesterday because I read about it in the Douglas budget, which was the first I heard about it, that they're trying to change the project, make it smaller, make it only wind. But what I also read in the Douglas budget was to add solar to it. But we haven't seen that on paper. I don't, and I asked the question yesterday, well, wouldn't that be enough of a change that we would have to reapprove the lease? And the answer I got was maybe not, because one of the things that is important to note for a couple reasons is state lands are a very small percentage of this project. And so I think the answer I got, which I want to delve into, another with the parties I need to, is that the portion on state lands actually wouldn't change. So they wouldn't have to resubmit a project. So that's we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination.
All right, fair enough. And a lot of this stuff is super complicated, and I think that a lot of people see a headline and this is the case with just about everything, but people see a headline and then assume a whole bunch of details about it that may not necessarily be true. And so, I think it's helpful to get people like yourself, and we interviewed Superintendent Degenfelder not that long ago and asked her about the same questions.
Yeah.
Excuse me for a minute. The swamp sickness has shown up a little early this year.
Don't bring that crud down to Cheyenne. I'm healthy right now.
Oh, I'm on the downhill part of it. Now it's just getting rid of the junk. All right. So since I have you on the phone, Christy, there's I mentioned that there's been several votes on the board as it pertains to wind. And, I just don't think that the technology exists to make it a profitable enterprise that it can stand on its own. And I also think that our reliance on it may threaten our traditional extractive industries. And so I wanted to give you a chance to talk about some of those votes that have happened on the board. Maybe just fill us in what your thinking was.
Yeah.
I'll just give the floor to you, and you can talk about it.
Yeah, this is where I get to talk about my feelings.
Yeah, I told you I was interested.
Yeah. So, and sometimes I'm more, sometimes I'm candid to my detriment. You know, I didn't show up on this board knowing everything about everything by the stretch of the imagination. And you know, I think the wind conversation has taken a massive shift in 2025. And I'll talk about that a little bit and maybe the reasons why. And this is something I'm working, this is what I ponder at 2 a.m. when you wake up, you know. I've been on this board, I've been on the land board a long time now, right? And I will tell you that 95% of the commentary, public feedback, emails, phone calls, 95% of what I've heard about wind has been in the last 2 months.
Wow.
So I haven't exactly calculated that, but I don't, you know, I could.
Well, you're the math lady, so yeah.
I think there has been a wake-up call, and I think part of it has been that President Trump has really opposed wind and put that in the forefront. But I think even more what's happened here in Wyoming is these projects are popping up closer to A, in more places, and B, closer to where people live. The turbines have gotten taller. And so I just think, again, what I'm hearing is, holy cow, tap the brakes. Because again, I've been on this board for 7 years, and we have had multiple, and there hasn't been dozens by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, as you know, there's been multiple wind projects go through this board 5-0 in relatively recent history. Does that make them okay? No, but there's almost like it's almost like a vacuum. And so it has been good. Don't get me wrong, highly uncomfortable. I feel like I'm on a statewide apology tour, right? Which I deserve to be. Highly uncomfortable, but good that all of these people are up in our business and letting us know their concerns with this. And the reason I want to talk about that is, again, like if we get to the bottom of this issue, David, like, and here I'll go back to like, okay, Christy, your vote on Pronghorn was stupid. Why did you vote for that? Well, here's one of the things, and again, I'm not saying this is an excuse, but I'm giving you some reasons. Sure. State lands are always a small portion of these. You know, these two projects, one of them was 27% and one was 19%, I think. And I always ask the question, well, what happens if we deny this? Well, this project is happening anyway. We'll just move it around. You know, so on one hand, I think I've tried to be pragmatic, which may not have been the best thing, and saying, okay, this project's happening anyway. We might as well benefit from it. And now I get that, you know, that's not a reason enough. The other thing I think is I think maybe the board, but you know, I can't speak for my members, maybe have placed too much of a reliance on some of the other processes that control these projects. You know, a state land lease is one out of, 100 things that have to be done to put one of these projects up. And so, I've taken a stance with a lot of different things like, well, these projects should be allowed to to succeed or fail on their own. But again, I think this wind conversation, I don't know how to say this gracefully, but it is fundamentally different than other things we do on state land. And that's really what I've, I was going to say woken up to, but then you'll say she's woke.
No, I wouldn't say that.
But does that make sense? And here's why I think it's really important that people hear this. You know, a bunch of the commentary that I heard yesterday and like comments on Facebook I've gotten last night was, okay, well, now you guys need to go stop the Chugwater Wind Project. And I'm like, we don't have anything to do with that. Again, like, so maybe if something positive, like I've taken some votes that I got wrong, would I have done them differently with the information I have now? Yes. You know, I actually tend to think most of us are doing the best we can with the information we have on that day. I know you would disagree with me on a few things on that, but this is not just a conversation for the Board of Land Commissioners, because first off, all that's going to do is these projects are just going to not use state lands.
Well,
right?
and
so,
you know, listening to you talk about that, I'm reminded of a conversation that in the House of Representatives, and they were talking about carbon sequestration. And Mike Greer was at the microphone, and he says, well, you know, if a crack shows up in the ground and all this carbon escapes, well, so what? It's just CO2. And, you know, he went on to say, well, you know, it doesn't really matter anyway. Okay. Well, I think that the apprehension a lot of people have to some of these projects, it's not just wind, but carbon sequestration, all of it, is that they're just sick of the push towards renewable energy. And my opposition to it maybe is a little bit different than other people. One, I agree with you that these projects should stand or fall on their own, and a lot of them, you know, wouldn't be profitable without any sort of government subsidy, you know, federal subsidy or whatever. And we shouldn't. Right. I don't think that we should be doing that. I think it's picking winners and losers, and there's a whole bag of reasons there. Second, I've walked around the bases of some of these things, and I'm not saying they're all like this, but they are the furthest thing from green energy. That, you know, I was visiting a friend over around Bill, and around his property, there's windmills everywhere, and we walked around the base of them. And man, it looked like somebody had changed their oil at the base of this thing about 20 different times. Yeah. And so, you know, I think that the conversation that we have around these projects often is not one that's entirely honest. You know, we're told by developers, hey, it's green energy, it's renewable, it's fantastic, they're going to be great. And then the reality is very, very different. And then I think the other part of it too is, man, when you drive from Midwest to Casper, and you look off, well, I guess, you know, going south, you look off to the left and you can really see it at night. All you see is a sea of these red blinking lights. And I think that's a big source of frustration for a lot of people too, is they're kind of unsightly. I mean, you know, but there again, on the other side of this, and I try to look at both sides of things, there's a lot of opposition to oil and gas projects too, on state land, on BLM land. Anytime you try to put one of those up, you're going to have a lot of opposition from the other side. So I think, and we get that. Yep, we get that on SLIB for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, so I think that we need to have a more, like you said, a more honest discussion about these projects. And it just so happens that Pronghorn and to a lesser extent, Sidewinder, man, they really ticked people off. Well, and again, this goes back into my bucket of not excuses, but reasons. You know, we pushed this decision originally. These were actually on our agenda, the meeting or two meetings before April, and we held off. I don't think we tabled it. I think they pulled it off the initial agenda, and almost all the commentary I was hearing was,
we're fine with wind, just don't put it here. Don't put it on the Duncan Ranch. Like whatever you do, don't put it on the Duncan Ranch. We're we're not opposed to wind. Duncan Ranch, just not on the Duncan Ranch, right? I don't know if you've ever been to the Duncan Ranch.
No, I never have.
It's pretty great. It's a state property by Glen Rock. You put it on your list if you're, as you're passing by it, which you often will be.
Like
and
tomorrow.
So a lot of what exactly. A lot of what I was hearing, and again, this was me just being short-sighted and not reaching out, being more proactive about reaching out to what not realizing I wasn't hearing more of a broad base, but everything I was hearing was, whatever you do, don't put it on the Duncan Ranch. Well, the project proponent was like, we hear you. We've removed it from the Duncan Ranch. And so I'm like, boop, ba-doop, ba-doo, looks like we're good to go, which and then I feel like an idiot.
Well, and there's a lot of different things that go into this, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there haven't been a ton of these votes, and if you just like breeze through the media, it makes it seem like the only thing you guys do is talk about wind. But the reality is there have been no more than, I don't know, what, 8, 9 of them since,
that feels about right. Yeah.
And
that feels about right. Yeah.
And you're right. On at least a couple of them, they went through 5-0 on the board. So, it's not like it's just one person or all. I just think that we need to have a more honest discussion about this. All right, let me switch gears, and I know you got to get on the road, go to your track meet.
Yeah.
But are you running
I'm just glad it's not a blizzard.
Yeah. So, are you running for re-election? Tell me about it.
I am running for re-election. This is not an official announcement. There will be an official announcement forthcoming. But as you know, I love my job. And when I ran for this job, I remember saying and trying to convince people, no, I don't want to be governor. I don't want to be Secretary of State. I actually want this job. And I do, and I like my job. At some days less than others, but yeah, I do plan to run for re-election. I think we've, and it's always tough. I mean, I've been in office a while now, and so people might say you're done. You've been in there too long, but I also think that's, as you know, it's really some of that institutional knowledge. First off, I've become a better SLIB member, despite how it looks. I'm getting better every day, I'll say that. But, we've done things in the office, the stuff that nobody sees, that's been phenomenal.
Yeah. Your wide open was incredible.
Yeah, and thank you, but now we're all used to that, and it's great. And I think my message this legislative session, and I know you run into this as much as anyone, transparency is not it's not a hot sexy front page topic, right? It's not property taxes, it's not abortion, it's not, and those things are all of those things should be at the top of the stack, right? They're at the top of the stack for a reason. But it's so easy to let transparency slip.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that one, Christy. Like, I think that people are very interested in transparency right about now with everything that we've watched in Minnesota. Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I guess, and the reason I say that, it sounds like I'm complaining. I'm not. It's harder to get bills over the finish line. You know what I mean? And it's a little bit harder to make improvements. And so, I just think there's always work to be done. There's always folks that need poked. There's going to be a bill to update the Public Records Act this time around, which
it's
I think
a great
is
bill.
Great. It may not go far enough, but I think we've made I think there's some compromises that will get it that'll make it awfully hard to vote against, right?
Well, the biggest problem
So
with
that's
that,
cool.
and for all of my listeners that may not know, if you've got a public records request, Auditor Racines is awesome with those. You do a great job
Thank you.
with those. But
Thanks.
that Public Records Act, where the group of people that get hurt the most with how our laws are right now are people like me, right? That don't have a lot of money. And when
Absolutely. Yeah.
and when you submit a records request to, I don't know, like the WCDA, for example, and you're told, well, yeah, we'll give it to you, but it's going to be $100 a page. Oh, and by the way, there's 2,000 pages you've requested. And that's ridiculous. And it's
asinine.
Yeah.
Totally.
And, all of these agencies hide behind that little loophole in the law that just, I can't remember the exact language, but basically it says you can charge a reasonable fee. Well, okay. So what is reasonable?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, what's the definition of pornography? It's hard to define, but you know it when you see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reasonable is the same way, and $100 a page ain't it.
Yeah. Exactly right.
Yeah, and so I think I take for granted, being the state government, and disagree with me, right? The state government proper, like state agencies, we're actually doing pretty good with public records requests as a whole. Now, there's exceptions. I get that.
Yeah, there's a couple of really bad
exceptions.
exceptions.
Absolutely, but it's the smaller entities and the local entities that I hear the most complaints about, and changing it's changing a mindset, and that's tough.
Well, real quick story for you, and I know you got to run. So I submitted a public records.
I'm good on time.
I submitted a public records request to the city here in Sheridan. This was a couple of years ago, and on their website it says we can charge you $95 an hour, and the fee that they came back with me, it was like $45 they wanted. So when I went to pick up the public records request, I asked the clerk, I said, why am I paying you $45? She goes, well, that's the fee. It's the time it takes to put all this together. And I said, well, aren't I already paying for your time? Don't you get paid by tax dollars? Well, yeah, but you have to pay for our time. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I already am. And, to her credit, she goes, well, how's $15 sound? And I'm like, okay, good. Here's your money.
Good enough.
But that's the absurdity of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can think of some exceptionally limited circumstances, but as part of our government, and I've been in the government a while, it's part of my job. It is absolutely part of my job. Unless it's something that's going to take, 3,000 hours worth of work. And if it does, then I would ask why. Because if it takes that long to produce, it's probably something you don't have. And if it's something you don't have, you're not required to produce it.
Yeah,
by the law. So I don't know where. Again, it's an attitude.
Well, and I think that you hit on a good point that I think it's important to talk about. There are fishing expeditions in public records requests that, and a lot of times you get these from out of state groups, but they just submit a blanket request. We want all the documentation, emails, phone calls, anything having to do with the State Lands and Investment Board. Are you kidding me? It's just a lot of them. Some of them are fishing expeditions that are just ridiculous.
Totally. Or designed to muddy up the process. I have a real dumb example that you'll probably appreciate.
Okay, go for it.
So I was watching my son's baseball coach once talk about batting, giving him an example, and the analogy, what he was saying is that you assume that ball's a strike until you know it's not. And the point was, by the time you wait and realize it's a strike, you're not ready. So you've got your leg up, you're swing. No, it's a strike. No, it's a ball. And then you pull back. So you are assuming that's a strike until you for sure know it's not. And so the assumption is it's always public. Everything is so my point is the assumption is release. Oh, wait, that's a private, until you always start out with the assumption is to release. And I think so many places, and some of this is intentional, honestly, David, some of it I think is just fear. I think a lot of these smaller entities, they're not trying to do a bad job, and they're not purposely trying to be opaque. They're just scared, because they've been made to be scared by stories or lawyers or whatever,
Right.
and they just don't want to screw and get in trouble. And so if you switch that mindset where everything is a strike until it's a ball.
Exactly. No, I think you're right. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Auditor Racinas, I got to run. Great talking with you. We'll probably see you Monday, and we'll have you. We'll have you on the on our nightly news broadcast when we get set up in Cheyenne. So have fun at your track meet.
Yeah. Thanks. Travel safe.
All right. Well, that was Auditor Christy Racinas, one of my favorite people in Wyoming government. You can always walk into her office, and I was absolutely being serious. Like if you have a public records request, Auditor Racinas will bend over backwards to get it done for you. She's one of those people that really loves being the auditor. Now, I mean, as you can tell, we've had some disagreements about some of the votes on the State Lands and Investment Board, but for the most part, I like her. All right, we're going to take our last break, and when we come back, we'll finish up the program. Back in a minute on Open Line Friday. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely, and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country, and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is already expanding faster than I ever thought it would. A gigantic audience for Cowboy State Politics Live. Thank you for watching. Thank you for everything you do for this show. You make my day every time I get to sit down in front of this microphone and talk to you. So thank you for everything you do. Just another quick recap of what's about to happen. So next week, we're going to move to kind of a shortened time frame. The program will be from 8 to 9 in the morning, from Tuesday through Friday, same days of the week, and same start time. Everything. It's just I got to have time to get ready to go to the session. So we'll do an hour every morning during the session. Also, don't forget, we'll be debuting a new news program called The Roundup every evening, Tuesday through Friday also at 7 a.m. And we'll broadcast that to the apps, to the website, to YouTube, to everywhere that we can think of. And so you'll definitely be able to watch it. We're going to have local legislators. Auditor Racinas already said should be on the show. And I've, like I told you, I've already opened everything up to the Democrats too, because we're interested in news at the Open Range Record. And we're going to stick to it. However much headache medicine I have to take, we're going to do it. Not the case with Cowboy State Politics, though. All right. So have you heard about these so-called voluntary gun buybacks? Well, first, none of them are ever voluntary, and it's not a gun buyback. It is a gun confiscation. And it is absolutely an intrusion into your liberty, no matter which country or state you happen to live in. You have a God-given right to protect you and your family and to protect your country from tyranny, which in our country, that's the reason behind the Second Amendment. Well, in Canada, they have a very different view of that. Well, at least the people in charge have a very different view. From the Daily Wire, Canada's massive voluntary gun buyback program comes with prison time. And I quote, hundreds of thousands of Canadians could face prison time if they do not turn in their newly prohibited guns under the supposedly, quote, voluntary gun buyback, a program that is testing the strength of Canada's bureaucratic regime. Since May of 2020, the Canadian government has attempted to institute a massive assault-style firearms compensation program that will purportedly trade cash for prohibited guns. If Canadians do not turn in a prohibited gun by October of 2026, they could face up to 5 years in prison. And so it's not voluntary, and it's not a gun buyback. It is a gun confiscation. Let's see. The program has faced massive pushback from provincial leaders and gun rights organizations who say it will not only disarm law-abiding Canadians. Quote, we're finding that they're running into a lot of compliance issues. Weird. You try to take somebody's gun away and you have a problem with them complying with what you tell them. Anyway, Blair Hagan, an executive at Canada's National Firearms Association, told the Daily Wire, they have no idea where the guns are or who has them. So it's proving to be a very, very difficult situation for the government. I assume many of them were lost in a tragic boating accident. Due to the scope of the program, the government has extended amnesty 3 times for ownership of one of the thousands of banned so-called assault-style guns, which is not a thing, by the way. Assault weapons there is no such thing as an assault weapon. It's a term made up by the left to make you afraid of, AR-15s, AR platform type weapons. They aren't assault weapons. AR stands for Armalite rifle. After the first person that came up to him, that was the name of the rifle, Armalite rifle. It doesn't mean assault rifle. In an order from the council rolled out by then President Justin Trudeau of May of 2020, banned thousands of, quote, assault weapons and claimed to offer compensation to those who voluntarily turn in their weapons. According to Hagan, an order in council is, quote, a non-democratic legal instrument. Weird. Who could have ever thought that was going to be undemocratic? Maybe it was. That's how they got it passed. Today, the government describes participation in the gun buyback program as voluntary, but that compliance with the gun ban is required. Quote, While participating in the program is voluntary, compliance with the law is not. Businesses and individual firearm owners must safely dispose of or permanently deactivate their firearms before the amnesty period ends, or risk criminal liability for the illegal possession of a prohibited firearm, the government said in its website. Now, anytime a government says that they're going to confiscate or there's going to be a gun buyback or whatever the case may be, they're about to do something to you for which you would shoot them. That is the easiest way to explain it. If there is a politician anywhere, and it doesn't matter if it's here in the United States or if it is in Canada or some other country, the reason a politician says that they're going to confiscate weapons is because they're planning to do something for which you would shoot them. That's why they want your guns, to prevent you from killing them. And again, the reason why this country has the Second Amendment is not for hunting. It's not for sport. It's not for any of those things except your protection and the protection against tyranny. George McSorry, he's a professor at the University of Wyoming. He is the foremost expert on the Second Amendment in the entire country, and he's at the University of Wyoming. He over and over, he has made the case that the Second Amendment is about tyranny protection. That's what it is so that if the government is going to do something tyrannical, you have the ability to fight against them. And he further argues that under the Second Amendment, you should be entitled to all the arms that the government has. After the Revolution, after the Constitution, there were many laws passed in the United States that required firearm and ammunition ownership by law. And, while, again, we're talking about Canada with this piece, there are lots of politicians in the United States that would love nothing more than to take your guns away from you. And there's a lot of reasons, and I didn't get to a lot of them in today's program. But I've got a whole stack of articles here that should tell you to be very happy that we live where we do. Where we do live in a state that loves the Second Amendment, that loves firearms, that loves freedom. But there are other places in this country and in this world, just like in Canada, that they don't have the same reverence for your God-given liberties. And let me just talk about that for a second. The Constitution does not grant you your rights. The Constitution is a list of things that the government can't do to you. Okay? And it is just a list. Your rights are given to you by God, not by government. If your rights are given to you by government, then necessarily they can be taken away by government, which means that they're not rights at all. The rights that we have in this country are God-given. That means they are they came before the Constitution, and the only thing the Constitution does is list the things that the government can't do to you. It's important that you understand that concept. Because, and just take the Wyoming Constitution. There will probably be, though I haven't paid enough attention to all the bills that are proposed. I've been saving that for next week. But there's probably going to be a couple of constitutional amendments in there. So in Wyoming, with the agreement of the legislature and with the vote of the people, our Constitution can be changed. And the same is true for the U.S. Constitution, though it's much more difficult. You see, if the Constitution can be changed, then the Constitution doesn't grant any rights. You see what I mean? Those rights are granted by God, not by government. And anybody who claims that they can create a right or that government can create a right, you need to tell them that you are profoundly mistaken. Now, there's another piece in here, and let me just find it real quick. Yeah, here we go. Yet another one in the stack of reasons why you should be very happy you live where you do. This one is from the Federalist. And again, we're talking about a foreign country, but still, this one might have some impact on you. So it's from the Federalist in an article entitled, "Europeans Testify How Europe is Banning Americans from Saying What They Believe." And I quote, "The European Union now constantly violates fundamental Western rights to freedom of speech and the freedom of religion and claims the power to ban speech across the globe." European witnesses testified to the U.S. Congress Wednesday morning. Quote, "European laws are now being exported by the European Union. American speech is already being affected," testified Lorcan Price, an Irish lawyer for Alliance Defending Freedom International. under hate speech policies that Europe is applying across the world, speech that is lawful today can be criminalized tomorrow, which, again, the government doesn't grant your right to talk. God does. That should concern every person that values freedom, testified Finnish Member of Parliament Päivi Räsänen. Irish comedian Graham Linehan also testified before the House Judiciary Committee. In September, he was arrested at Heathrow Airport by British authorities for criticizing transgender policies. Because of that arrest, he testified, quote, "I became the target of a series of harassment campaigns that cost me my career, my marriage, and eventually drove me from my homeland." These Republican witnesses testified alongside Democratic witness Dipinder Singh Mayal, a leader of Minnesota's branch of the American Civil Liberties Union. Democrats on the committee focused on blasting federal immigration enforcement and insisted that attacking and harassing law enforcement is protected free speech. Mayal refused to answer when Chip Roy of Texas asked if illegal alien child rapists and murderers should be deported. Of course, he's not going to answer that question. Well, you absolutely do have the right to criticize your government. And I mean, you have the right to say anything you want. Now, with rights come responsibilities. This is for certain. We have laws against slander and libel. You can't say things that aren't true, Ed Cooper. You can't claim that people are getting paid when they're not. That's not covered by the First Amendment. But there are repercussions to that. So anyway, guard your freedom of speech, guard your Second Amendment. Be very happy that you live where you do. All right, my friends. Well, that pretty much wraps up another busy broadcast hour on the program, 2 hours-ish on the program. I got to get packed and go to Cheyenne, cover the legislative session, watch what all these redcoats are doing. And so don't miss the podcast tomorrow. I'll have one ready for you. It's going to be kind of a recap because I'm really busy today getting ready to head to Cheyenne. But anyway, don't miss the podcast. Don't miss a minute of Cowboy State Politics Live. And we'll see you next week, next Tuesday, from Wyoming's Middle Swamp down in Cheyenne. By the way, I have decided what the source of Wyoming's wind is. It is the Capitol building itself. Plenty of hot air coming out of there. So for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you next week, my friends.